I am so honored to introduce Gerald Savage. Gerald's formal native name is Ho-Chunk Skaga, or White Winnebago. He is a tribal elder with the Ho-Chunk Nation. Tonight, he will discuss the reintroduction of his family into the Illinois Valley, tribal customs and ways, the history of the tribe, modern natives, naming ceremonies, stereotypes, environmental concerns, tribal settlements, and reservations. Gerald's grandparents were Chief Walks with the Wind and Princess Stands on a Cloud. They were very influential in the teaching of Gerald the native customs and ways. He carries on his grandfather's tradition of teaching people about their tribal ways. His program is about the history, past and present, from a native perspective. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Aho, hachokaru nina hinakagari, hapije, rajaska, hochunskaga hingaira. Hanichari haipin. Did anybody understand what I just said? That would have been the problem that they would have had 400 years ago when the first people that came through the river tributaries that met with my Ho-Chunk people. I am Ho-Chunk Native American. What I said to you is, my friends, I greet you. It's a nice day today. Ho-Chunk-Skaga is what I'm called, and I'm glad to see you all today. So in case there was bad weather, I have a little addendum on there too. I don't get to speak enough Ho-Chunk language to be that fluent. So I've got that down pretty good. I just have my cheat sheet occasionally so I don't mess up. Because eventually there's going to be a Ho-Chunk person in the crowd, and they're going to tell me afterwards, "Oh, you messed that up, Kunu." So, like I say, my name is Gerald Savage is my white name, but my native name is Ho-Chunk-Skaga, which means White Winnebago. Like I say, you guys get to see some of my new PowerPoint, so I think you might be the third crowd to see it, and I keep working on it all the time. So I'm with the Ho-Chunk Nation. The Ho-Chunk Nation is out of Wisconsin. Currently, right now, there are no native tribes that are recognized by the state of Illinois, indigenous tribes. So we're working on changing that. So I'm working on that, trying to get that done. But if you get a chance to go up to Wisconsin, that's where our tribal headquarters is, up in Black River Falls. But we're probably most noted for the eyesores along the interstate there. The casino. The casinos. We have several casinos. Those fund our cultural programs. They fund our health care for our elders. They're not just big money grabbing operations. So, and they fund our government, our form of government for our sovereignty. So, lawyers are expensive, healthcare is expensive, so you can imagine where a lot of that money goes. So if you get a chance, stop at a casino and throw like my grandfather would say, throw in a five or a 50. He always shot big. My grandparents, my grandfather was from Winnebago, Nebraska, and my grandmother was from Wisconsin Rapids. And they met when they got together in a Wild West show. This wasn't the Wild West show they were with. This is just a photo I pulled off of the internet. But they traveled in a Wild West show, and they were the Native American part of the Wild West show. They traveled all across the U.S. My grandfather, my grandmother said, well, he couldn't dance, so they made him the announcer. So, and then my grandmother, she danced. So, but there's a picture of them. While they were traveling, a very charismatic man, he met with my grandfather, and he asked my grandfather if they would be interested in moving into Illinois. My grandfather said, yeah, I'd like to see what you're talking about. And this gentleman took him down to Starved Rock. In 1935, the CCC was just finishing up building the Starved Rock Lodge. This was the Starved Rock Lodge. This is the hotel. And they had converted that into concession stands. So this is an old file photo when they were building the Starved Rock Lodge. There's a picture of the family as they got older. He sold postcards with the stuff on. My grandfather was really good. From his days of being with the Traveling Wild West show, he knew how to draw people in. He knew how to talk to people. And we ran an archery stand down in Starved Rock. It was kind of neat. I grew up with my grandparents, and we're working at the archery one day, and my grandfather would be sitting there, and people would come up and say, "Oh, we want to try shooting the bow and arrow." And humor is really big with Native Americans. Let me just say that right off the bat. Well, these people walked up, and my grandfather started speaking German to them. they were confused like you wouldn't believe. So he had a very good sense of humor. So a little further down the line, I'm going to jump ahead in a few years here. This is in 1962. The young lad that's right here, that's me. That was at my naming ceremony in 1962. If you look, this is Chief White Eagle. He was the chief of the tribe back then. And then my mother, father, my uncle, and my grandfather. And then that's me, my grandfather's Holden. Back when I'll go into naming ceremony right now, because this was at my naming ceremony. We had the chief come down. He did the naming for me. If you look in the photo here, back in the late 60s or early 60s, late 50s, you didn't want to have dark skin. Racism was pretty prevalent. So my uncle, my father, my mother, my aunt, they all stayed in and get the lightest skin as they could. They didn't get dark skin because of the racism that was out there. My grandfather, he didn't have a choice. He was as dark as me. So but the naming ceremony, Chief White Eagle was looking around, and he seen all of the white skin. And then he named me White Winnebago. So it wasn't too long, my uncle that's there, he has passed a couple years ago, but about 7 years ago, I was given an honor. This was the amount of people that were at Starved Rock for my naming. My uncle worked for Foot Cone and Belding in Chicago, which was a national advertising company, commercial advertising. And he did all the press for this. They said Starved Rock had 40,000 people come to the park that day for my naming ceremony. We had people from 30 different tribes show up that day. And you can see the amount of chiefs that are around in the center area there. So that, and then you can't charge to get a charge and admission. He had this put up, so, but if you did come in, there was a blanket there for you to throw some money on. So that's how he raised money. So this was in 1962. So here's the crowd for a naming ceremony that I did 2 years ago. My sister had passed away from COVID, and one of her wishes was to have her daughter named. And she wanted to have a big powwow and that. I go, yeah, we can't. The land is too deteriorated, but the lodge hosted us. The last time we had a naming ceremony at the Starved Rock Lodge was right around 70 years ago was the last naming that happened there. If you look up front, I'm up front there. My son's off to the left of me there. And we got another chief over here, Chief Elliott. We have an elder sitting over here also. We've got quite a few people. It took quite a bit to get this naming ceremony together. So it was a really good time for the naming. The naming ceremonies go like you would think they do. There's my niece right there. And then there's the elder that named her. It was kind of a neat naming ceremony because he'd only got to talk with her for about a half hour. And then I had supplied all of our family names, thinking that he would choose one of the family names, pull them out, because we're all with the Bear Clan. I am a Bear Clan member also. So he had only met her for a half hour and talked to her for a half hour. He named her Wowa Piwinga, which means good thinker. She is a nighttime technician for Intel Corporation for troubleshooting. So I thought about that. I go, how fitting of a name is that? You know, he said the creator gave him that name. And that's the name when we were given a name, like me, White Winnebago. That's how the creator will remember me when I come up to meet him, or when I cross to the spirit world. They'll know, they know us by our name. So having our name is a big thing within our tribe. So, like I say, we've got different chiefs here. We had the drum there. It was a big deal. It was a really big deal. We had standing room only. The room only holds about 200, but there was probably 300 people there because it was just standing room. It was just wall to wall people. There's my niece off to the right on that one. We have the eagle feather staff. That's Native American flag. We while I'm thinking about that, are there any veterans in the crowd? We want to thank you for your service. When we do all of our ceremonies, the first thing that we do is honor our veterans. So that's always a tradition with the Native American. When you go to a powwow, they'll start that powwow off, and they'll ask you to come out and dance with them to honor you. You know, so it's a big deal within our Native people. So, like I say, the last time there was a naming at Starved Rock was in the 50s, and that was my aunt. She was named, and you have 3 chiefs, and then this gentleman here, he's the manager of the Starved Rock Lodge at the time. So, and but he was always good to my grandparents, because my grandparents would have they would have a show every weekend at the lodge, and he always gave them some money to do a little program. And he would have his boy do a dance. He was a leader of a Boy Scout troop, and he taught the Boy Scouts how to dance. And it was kind of funny. My uncle was telling me, yeah, one day we're there and we're all in line, we're all in our regalia. And my grandfather says, well, I need a volunteer, one of you young men, to volunteer for this dance. And he goes, I don't know how they did it, but they all stepped back and left me standing out there. So, like I say, that sense of humor, it goes down a ways. So when I talk about the regalia, Halloween is already passed, but we talk about our regalia. This is our traditional wear. What I have on today, this is a woodland chieftain's turban. This is what a woodland chief would wear. So I am a member of the Bear Clan, so I have a bear claw necklace on. I have a star on, indicating that I'm a chief. And if you notice, I've got a bone breastplate and a bone choker. Back in the old days, there used to be a lot of deer, and there actually used to be buffalo here. And we would hunt buffalo. Nobody wanted to get gored. This was the old timers bulletproof vest. So when it was wove tight with the bone, it would stop that horn from goring you, because you didn't want to get gored in the stomach and you didn't want to get gored in the neck. Those were 2 sensitive areas. So, and that's some of the history. So this is a bone breastplate. So this is a buckskin shirt with the trade beads on it. I've got moccasins on. as my grandfather used to say, white people changed the name to moccasins because it used to be called mogossinins. So the different things like that happen all the time. A lot of my people get very upset when they see somebody wearing a native outfit that doesn't deserve to wear it. There's a lot of different beliefs and customs with a lot of different outfits, because we have jingle dancers, we have buckskin dancers, we have ribbon outfits, we have fancy dancers. And that's just the women. You know, the men, there's grass dancers, fancy dancers, straight dancers, traditional dancers. So, like I say, there's my cousins, and then there's me on the right-hand side when I was dancing. So that's been a few years ago. So we like I say, regalia, not costumes. So a few years ago, about 7 years ago, I was given a great honor. I'll go back to when my grandfather passed away. My grandfather passed away in 1985. And I thought it odd that my grandmother would ask me if I wanted my grandfather's bonnet. I go, no, Grandma, that's his bonnet. He gets buried with it. I didn't realize at the time that our tribe was a matriarchal society. It's the chief's eldest daughter's first boy becomes the next chief. And I never realized this till I was in my 40s, but even at that young age of, I think I was 24 or 25 when my grandfather passed. And I told my grandmother, no, Grandpa gets buried with his bonnet. He's buried with his bonnet still yet today. He's got a traditional bald eagle bonnet. They said that I just learned a couple weeks ago, we were talking about bonnets, and one of the tribal elders said, oh, you've got a golden eagle bonnet. And he goes, that's actually more sacred than the bald eagle bonnet. So I didn't realize that. After my grandfather had passed away and was buried with his bonnet, my grandmother started putting away. She had a bonnet made for me, let's just say that. The person that made the bonnet moved to Europe, and he'd actually forgotten about it. And when he was getting ready to move back to the States, he got a hold of my uncle to get me the bonnet. And like I say, my uncle, he was giving me the bonnet the one day we have an annual tribute to my grandfather. So we went ahead and he gave me the bonnet that day. This bonnet comes with immense responsibility. I am not the chief of the tribe. I'm a territorial Bear Clan chief. So I know I always, if there's a newspaper person here, they always get it wrong and say I'm the chief of the tribe. I'm not the chief of the tribe. I'm just a territorial chief. So if there's any news people here, I want to make sure I get that out, because I don't need another nasty call from the tribe. You know you're not the chief. Yeah, I know I'm not the chief. No, we have our traditional chief is Chief Winishik. He's a traditional chief. He sits on the courts up in Wisconsin. He's an elderly gentleman. I know there's 2 other Bear Clan chiefs also. So one of them is the current president of our tribe. He's a Bear Clan chief. And then another one, he was in the pictures just a bit ago. He's a Bear Clan chief also. Let's see if I can go back to him. He's a Bear Clan chief also. And he wears his Marine Corps rosette very proudly. So he is a regular bald eagle one. So I'll go into a little bit about rites of passage. Since we do have a few guys that served in the military. Do you guys remember your first night in boot camp? There was probably a little crying going on in them barracks. It's the first time away from mom and dad, and nobody's there to protect you. Your Uncle Sam's clay. Well, at 13 years old, part of the manhood right in my tribe was to go out into the woods with what you could carry. At 13 years old, you're not a great planner. I had my backpack full of Dinny Moore, Slim Jims. I was going to live pretty darn good. Well, like I say, that first night come by and every noise in that woods, you never realized it at the time. You're the top predator in them woods. But at 13, your mind wanders and roams, and there's nobody there to protect you, to save you. You're on your own. So I did a little crying that night. And then, like I say, you look at things in a different perspective after that. So the manhood rights here, that's a Sioux one there where they pierce themselves with a deer antler and they hang on the rope. This one here, they blindfold the young man and put him out in the woods for a night. So the different manhood rights for different tribes. So, but you do a lot of growing up. Like I say, I didn't. At 13 years old, you're not a great planner. So the second day in, I realized, you know what? I forgot water. So I went down to the swamp and I found the source of the water feeding the swamp. I found a little spring bubbling up. And I go, well, I did things kind of backwards. I should have found some sort of water vessel. And I knew there was a set of railroad tracks a couple miles down. I walked down to the railroad tracks and I walked the railroad tracks, and about a mile later, I found a milk jug. Luckily, my picture wasn't on the side of it. Young lady, that's an age joke. Most everybody here will get that one, but some of the young people won't get that. So like I say, when people talk about the taste of water, it actually kind of rubs me the wrong way, because water is life. That's a native saying. It's repeated over and over and over and over. Everybody here was born of clean water. So you have to kind of put that in this perspective, that your mother actually had a lot of clean water available for you guys to be born the way you are. So that's why the natives, we look forward to the 7th generation. We want to make sure that we have clean water for our people in the future. So water is the most sacred medicine the Creator gave to us. It is the giver of life. That's a very true statement. So it's clean water. We want clean water. We really need to worry about what we're putting into the ground. So I was gonna ask, how long do you think it takes for this to biodegrade? 1,000 years. How do you think it tastes? Not too good. So, like I say, it takes up to 1,000 years for a plastic bottle to biodegrade. The young people that are here, if you get down to the local park, look at that local park. Look at the forest preserves. Those are all yours. That is land for you for the future. You need to look at that forest preserve and think, whoever thought of doing this, they did something right. If you see somebody throw some litter on the ground, be a bigger person and pick it up. But if you see that person throw it on the ground, don't be afraid to tell them that you're offended by that they need to pick that up. So that's where we need to be in society now, because people throw so much away and they don't throw it into where it needs to go or recycle what they need to do. It's a very important part of native life. Even I'll consider you all native, because The BIA is no friends to Native Americans. Their goal is to eliminate us. We have a blood quantum mandate that we have to do. So eventually it came out at one of our last tribal meetings that in 2060, my tribe will stagnate and we will start going in the opposite direction. Currently, right now, we have 8,000 members. So we'll be declining from there. And this is the part where I tell everybody, we are living history today, right now. We are at a moment in history, because when's the next time you're going to have a chief come down here and talk? It's probably not going to happen because there's not that many of us left. So it's and the ones that are left, they don't do public speaking, they do ceremonies mostly. So they'll talk, but you're not going to get the same kind of program. So we have common names in our tribe. Like you heard me earlier when I said Kunu, first boy, Hena, second boy, Haga, third boy, Nagi, fourth boy, and Nagi Runu, fifth boy. So the women have the common names too. My mother was a Hinu. My aunt was a Wiha. Another aunt was Haksiga, then Heneke, and then Haksiga Unu. So the women have common names also. So when we go to one of the Ho-Chunk powwows, and one of the grandmas turns around and yells, "Hey, Kunu," 50 heads are going to turn. Because when grandma speaks, we all listen. So that's probably pretty true still yet today. When grandma speaks, we all listen. So we make sure we take care of our grandparents. That's a very important thing that we do. It was one of the things that comes with this bonnet also. I not only have to take care of my family, I have to make sure that my relatives are well taken care of. So if I see somebody that's in need, or they needed money for a Halloween candy party, so I made sure I donated to that. So different things like that. The tribe doesn't give me a stipend like that, so I have to kind of do it on my own. I've been very fortunate in life, I'll have to say that. I was a half a day away from going into the Army. I had signed up with the recruiter and I was getting ready to take off for my physical the next morning. And I got a phone call that afternoon, and I ended up getting a good union job. And I go, well, being a young guy and a union job, and I go, I'll take the union job because that was good security for me. So, and I was fortunate to get a job at the auto plant. I was an auto worker. We just got over with our strikes. So the thing that kind of irked me about that was the media didn't pick up on all the concessions. We saved every company, we saved them. I was on our national bargaining committee, and we took a lot of concessions to save them companies. So media kind of spun it as greed, saying we're going to get a 40% increase. I don't get any increase because my retirement's locked in. And because my company went out of the States, they locked us in at a low rate because they said, take it or leave it. So it wasn't a good deal. So now I'm here speaking, that's how I have to supplement my income. But I do enjoy speaking. My grandfather used to speak all the time in Chicago. That was where we learned, me and my brother, my cousins, we all learned how to speak to people and talk about our tribal culture and history. So my cousin speaks also, and my brother, he doesn't want to speak. So we all do something like that there. You guys all recognize what this is, don't you? What kind of pipe is it? Okay, even my own people get it wrong. It's a prayer pipe. When the white man first met the Native Americans, they got together and they prayed for peace. That's why the white people call it a peace pipe. And that's kind of carried over. I know if you look at the pipe here, This is a Starved Rock ceremonial pipe. If you look at the stone, this is pipestone, and it's quarried in Pipestone, Minnesota. It's a national park up in Minnesota. And only Native Americans, you have to have your tribal ID in order to quarry pipestone in Pipestone National Park in Pipestone, Minnesota. It came to me to do that one time. So me and my boy, we went up to Pipestone National Park to quarry some pipestone. And we get up there. I got my boy his first tribal ID. He was 18 at the time, got him his ID. We get up to Pipestone and we get in there and we get checked in. And yeah, we want to quarry some pipestone. We're there bright and early in the morning, and he goes, I'll call the maintenance guy to pump out the pit, and I'll have security take you down there. Well, maintenance guy, he says he's got to pump the pit out, and I'm not quite understanding what he's meaning by that. So the pits that they're talking about kind of reminded you of graves, as they were only about, I'll say 6 foot wide by about 10 foot deep. And they were probably about 15 foot long. And you had to go down into the bottom to get the pipestone. It's buried under quartzite. Any of you guys see the purple stone that's along the railroad tracks? That's quartzite. It's one of the hardest stones out there, and it's quarried up in Minnesota. So you can't quarry pipestone without getting rid of the quartzite first. My boy was a very good baseball player. He hit a lot of home runs, and he broke my heart when he quit. But we're up in Pipestone there, and he grabs a sledgehammer and he's going to hit that quartzite and just break it to pieces. He swung hard like he was trying to hit a home run ball. So he hits that quartzite and it bounces back and puts a vibration into his hand. It's like hitting a steel girder. So I have a picture of him passed out on the motel bed after we got back, because he kept trying to bust that quartzite. I go, no, we have to find a fissure and we have to put a wedge in there and we have to break it that way. So it was a very educational experience. The back to Pipestone though, the security guard that came to pick us up, he came in one of them big golf carts that seats multiple people, and he pulls up and he's dressed up in desert camouflage fatigues, and he's got an M16. And I'm looking and I go, is there something that I should know? I go, is there, why are you fully armed like that? Because he had a sidearm also. And he goes, I just got back from the Middle East and this is what I wore every day, and this is what I feel comfortable in. So I go, well, we'll give him that. I go, the manager at the park gave us a little lecture ahead of time. Says, don't give away any pipestone. It's sacred. So we were the only people quarrying that day. So any people that came to the park sent them to see us. Said, oh, there's some natives quarrying over here. So we're down in the pit there, and there's plenty of chips all over. And this little 5-year-old kid comes up and he's wanting a piece of pipestone. And I go, I grabbed a little chip and I flipped it up to him. And I go, if anybody asks you, you didn't get it from me. So it was an interesting trip. You know, like I say, pipestone is called the blood of Mother Earth. So it's it can be molded into what we need it to be molded as. So contrary to the popular belief, Native Americans did not smoke dope. We smoked bare root, red willow bark, kinnikinnick. That's what's in the tobacco. It's all natural. So it's not, doesn't have any hallucinogens in it at all. So we try to live a very clean and healthy life. So some of the earliest music things, you can see the drum. This is a buckskin drum. Did you feel the resonance from the drum? Well, while I was in Pipestone, South Dakota's right there too. I took a ride over to the National Pipestone Museum and registered as a pipe carrier. And while I was out in the parking lot, I seen this odd-looking gentleman who had a white short fur jacket on. And I go, "Excuse me, I gotta know, what's the fur that you got on? What's the jacket?" He goes, "Well, this is from my goat. He died last year, and this is how I honor him. I made a jacket out of him." So the next question that comes out of his mouth was, "Did you bring your hand drum?" And I kind of looked at him, "Well, how do you know I got a hand drum?" He goes, "Well, I know who you are." And I go, "How do you know me?" He goes, "Well, you were sent here." He goes, I knew that." He was the medicine man for that area. It was kind of an interesting, I spent 4 hours in that parking lot talking with this gentleman. My boy got very annoyed with me. Yeah. But he was talking about the power of the hand drum, the power of the hand drum, how it heals. He said his most frequent call on the reservation is to the young ladies that are about to have a baby. He says he goes out there with his drum and he raises the heartbeat of the mother and of the unborn, and that forces the childbirth. So he sings a special song too. He said he had songs for gallstones, songs for pancreatic cancer, diabetes. So he had a lot of different songs that he sung. He was telling me about at the last Sundance that he was at singing. He was singing and he's noticing this woman dancing and dancing and dancing. And by the time he finished his song, she was standing next to him. And she goes, "My husband used to sing really, really well like you do." And he turned around to her and he said, "Well, he didn't know what he was doing either, huh?" Like I say, humor is pretty big with us Native Americans. You guys probably recognize this. We reused everything. We didn't let anything go to waste. So we use this to one of our a rattle. And then on the end there, you see the flute. Don't expect much. So I see there's no music people here too. No, we have a lot of different things. The young men used to in our tribe, only the men are allowed to play the wooden flute. The women can play the metal flute, that's fine. And you'll see that's the same with some of the other tribes also. The young men used to use that as a courting tool. And I guess you probably didn't have to be young either, but they would court the young ladies with the flute music. I know when I practice the flute out in the woods, the birds, they love to flock around and listen to the flute music. It is kind of neat because they'll all come in, they'll quiet right down, and you'll see these birds come in and just sit and listen. It's just really neat that they would do that. So it's I do that when I take a little break because I'm getting older now. I don't have the work ethic as I did when I was younger. Speaking of that, when I was younger, living out at Starved Rock there, I hated to cut grass. I just hated it. Why do I have to do it? I had the teenage thing going on. And I was cutting grass last year at the tribal property, and I got that strange feeling that somebody was watching me. And I know it was my parents and my grandparents and my uncle, and they're all laughing. "There's Kuno, he's cutting the grass." And they're just laughing. you know, because they knew I hated to cut grass. Now I don't mind it at all, so. But I knew they got a kick out of that probably. So the spirits are always kind of with me. So we didn't gain our citizenship here in the United States until 1924. And if you read this here, some states wouldn't even let us vote until 1957. So in Illinois here, the roundup of the Native Americans started in the 1820s. In Southern Illinois, there was even a bounty put on Native American scalps. You could get $50. The language was written if you take the scalp of a Native American and he had murderous intent, you'll be paid $50. Well, you kind of wonder who was going to be the judge, whether they had murderous intent. So, and then in the 1830s, they did the final roundup, because in the 1830s, there was 2 Native American events that happened in Illinois. Black Hawk had his uprising, and then some Potawatomi natives down in Ottawa, Illinois, they sent their son down to find out why the fish weren't migrating up the creek. They were used to a regular migration, and they would take the fish and store them. So they sent the chief's son to find out why the fish weren't coming up the creek. He went down a couple miles down, and he found that one of the people that had moved into the area had dammed off the creek. And he started tearing the dam apart. And the farmer and his boys seen that, and they got him, and they practically whipped him to death. And he got away, went back to the tribe, or to the settlement, and they gathered a bunch of natives, and they killed all the people in that little, the white people that were in the settlement there, and they kidnapped 2 of the young girls. The Ho-Chunk people were the ones that negotiated the truce and got the 2 girls back and gave them back to their parents, or to their relatives, because their parents had passed. So that sent another spark of urgency to clear out the natives in Illinois, because they thought all of the natives were going to rebel. I'm going to talk about Black Hawk a little bit. You probably heard about Stillman's Run. It's in military history. Chief Black Hawk sent 6 of his young guys to negotiate a surrender. He knew that he had all his people with him, and he knew he was outgunned, outnumbered, and he wasn't going to get his land back. He wanted to get his people safely across Mississippi back into Iowa. Well, three of the young men go up to the Illinois militia. Back then, the Illinois militia was a volunteer militia, and it's probably not too much different than today, where you have some young people that are a little trigger happy, and they wanted to shoot an Indian. Well, they were carrying a white flag. They shot 2 of the 3, and then they let the last one go as a spokesman to tell the tribe that no, they're not going to be able to surrender. So the other 3 seen this, and they came back. Well, Black Hawk seen this here. They seen the camp there. There was, I think, right around 1,200 militia camped out there, or 800, somewhere 800 to 1,200. It's fuzzy in my mind right now. He only had 80 braves to fight. He figured that he was going to go down fighting, because he didn't want to be enslaved or shot in some other way, killed it in a different way, because he's seen how those young people were treated. So he led a charge on that militia unit. Well, the reports from the reporter said there was 3,000 natives that came screaming out of the woods, and all they could do was retreat. He only had 80 men against 800. So he scared them so bad that they turned and ran. That's what at Stillman, Illinois. So that started everything. Right after that, they put a call to the federal government to get a paid militia. They came in, they got to Fort Dearborn, and they had a bad case of cholera, and that put everything behind a couple months, actually a whole month. So, and then they chased them all the way back up through Wisconsin to the Mississippi River. The general at the time, he was a definite war veteran. He had a steamboat come up the Mississippi with a Gatling gun. He had his people close in. It was kind of a neat how Black Hawk actually dodged the military. He was on a high point, they were on a high point, and there was a river that ran down below. So he was already, he had to go across the river one more time to get out of that valley. So he sent 8 of his warriors to take on the military. They went off to the side, and they distracted him while his people took off across the river. And they did this within one night. The whole group. There was about 200 to 300 people, mostly old women, old men, children. They crossed that river, and they were making their way towards Iowa. So it took the military 3 weeks to cross that same river. So, and they did it in one night. So it's part of the history that kind of doesn't get covered anymore. So like say in World War I, 12,000 Native Americans served. We weren't even citizens, and we served our country. This country here. If you get a chance to go up to Black River Falls, they have a monument outside the casino about the Red Arrow Division. It's a great big monument outside, and they have the names of the Ho-Chunk veterans on that monument from World War I. One of the biggest American Legion posts up in Wisconsin is the Andrew Black Hawk American Legion post, and he was mortally injured in World War I, so they named the American Legion post after him. I was at the Manuka Library, and the librarian warned me, Milo is going to be here. And I'm thinking, oh, this must be an argumentative man or something. No, he's an 11-year-old prodigy. He's in the library 4 and 5 days a week. He just can't get enough books to read. He comes to all of the speaker events, and he has the most interesting questions. Well, I get to this point in the program talking about that, and he had questions all the way through, and I go, you got to wait till the end. Well, he couldn't hold himself anymore. He jumped up and said, that's unfair. You guys were citizens here. You were here before everybody. You know, I really struck a chord with that young man. And I go, young man, we need you to run for Congress. We got a good round of applause on that one. We were the original code talkers, even in the World War I. A lot of people see the romantic version of the Navajo. The Ho-Chunks were there. There was a lot of different tribes who sent their people into the military. So we went ahead, we honor our people. Like I say, we still honor our veterans. That's one of the most important things that we can do. So a lot of times I think in my time in history, I think Bill Clinton said it right. It's a backdoor draft. These people went to war. They went to the military for a better way of life, to find out what's out there. Some of them came back, and some of them came back with baggage, still like today. So it's we have our version of our hero here, Mitchell Red Cloud. He gained the Medal of Honor posthumously in Korea. He was mortally wounded. They were under attack from a battalion of Chinese. He told his fellow soldiers to tie him to the tree, leave him with a machine gun and hand grenades. And he held off that battalion of Chinese long enough for his battalion to regroup and hold that front. Today, there's a troop carrier called the Mitchell Red Cloud. It's in the Pacific Fleet. So this is our hero. So we still honor him with powwows every year. Religious freedom. We didn't get our religious freedom until 1978. We would have Native American church services down at Starved Rock. We had a great big teepee, and people from Chicago would come down for Native American church. My mother would always say, if the people are asking what all the cars are here for today, just tell them we're having a meeting. Well, that's still code today for Native American church. We're going to have a meeting Saturday night. So I already know that's going to be Native American church. So we didn't receive our, like I say, until 1978. I was almost out of high school by then. In 1994, we finally got total religious freedom. It took that long. You know, we've been struggling with our ways. You'll see inside here, that's Native American church going to happen there. We have several different ways that we can practice. There's different ways in the Native American church. And there's different ways that we can do sweat lodge also. So we have a freedom of religion choice in our Native religion, just like you guys have your freedom of religions where you can handle the snakes or drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah. Well, the Supreme Court's not been good to us either. Here's some treaty maps. This is the first treaty map of Illinois. Illinois had redundant treaties. They had all of this information is on the internet. Just look up Illinois land cessation treaties, and you'll come up with two maps. This is the first one. And then you'll see that quite a bit of this here. Our traditional Ho-Chunk area. This would be the traditional Ho-Chunk area. Our Ho-Chunk area, we were discovered by Nicolette. He came across the lakes, and he had Jesuit priests with him. And he encountered the Ho-Chunk people, or back then we were called Puans. And the lake over here was Lake Puan. So that's before it became Lake Michigan. Our traditional territory, like say, he came to Green Bay, which we call Red Banks. And they found, when they arrived, there was a portico there. So because we had fought in the Iroquois before and some of the Algonquins. So they came across and they embedded the Jesuit priest with us. And they documented that after our tribe grown so big, we would split in half because that many people in one area, the land could not sustain us. So the tribe would split in half. And it was documented that the Sauk tribe was created out of the Ho-Chunk tribe, and the Fox tribe was created out of that. So that was documented. Also, they call my language a Siouan language. I know a white historian had to write that because our Ho-Chunk language, Ho-Chunk means people of the mother tongue or people of the big voice. So they call it, our language is very similar to the Sioux language, to the Iowa language, and Meskwaki language. There are so many tribes that were probably split out of the Ho-Chunk people, and they were sent west and southwest. So because we had neighbors up to the north that didn't want our people going up that way. They had plenty of problems up that way. So I think what happened was we sent the early people, like say Wisconsin archaeologists have my people dated back to 11,000 BC as mound builders. We build effigy mounds. We don't build the same mounds that they build down in southern Illinois. So we were effigy mound builders. So unfortunately, a lot of the effigy mounds are destroyed with development. So like I say, there was so many different treaties that had to be renegotiated. If you look on there online, you can look the treaties up. They had the names of the Native Americans that were involved with the treaty land cessation agreements. And they didn't understand what they were putting their X by, because they had to have 2 soldiers sign next to it. So here's the last treaty. You see the line up there that goes all the way across. There's some significance in that. Like I say, again, everything kind of changed. There's different intermarriages, different tribes took over different places. The rivers were the routes. You'll hear a lot of people talk about the Potawatomi were in the area. I go, you got to think back before, you got to look at the history before. The Potawatomi Nation is actually out of Michigan. They were chased into Illinois by the Iroquois. The Iroquois taught the Potawatomi how to fight, and that's how they gained so much land in Illinois. So a lot of the tribes were here well before. The land around Chicago was traded so many different times from the different tribes. The Ojibwe were here, the Ho-Chunk were here, the Potawatomi were here. You know, there's different tribes lay claim to it. I want to finish with a story, and then we'll go into questions. Let me start this off right. Hey, 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 a long time, long before the two-leggeds came onto Turtle Island here, the crow was the most beautiful bird in the world. He had the best singing voice. He had the best looking feathers. He's still yet today, he's one of the most intelligent birds out there. So the head crow was meeting with his people because he had a meeting with Mauna, the creator. And he was going to have this meeting. And he was asking the fellow crows, what are your issues? What can I tell the creator? And some of the stuff that they talked about was insignificant stuff that could be dealt with easily by just somebody talking with people. But the old crow, he pipes up and he goes, it is so dark out at night. Strange things rub against me. And in the morning, some of my friends and relatives are gone. And the head crow listens to that and he goes, I will tell the creator that. So the head crow meets with the creator, and he relays his, let me go back one. He relays his message to the creator. And the creator tells him, come back and talk to me in 100 years. Back then, time flew just like that. 100 years went by, and the creator already had a plan. And in that 100 years, he went out and he set seeds out and he took care of this problem. He had a plan for all of this. So 100 years goes by. Crow meets with Mauna, the creator, and says, I have a solution to your problem. And he goes, he's listening. He goes, gather as much of the sacred wood as you can and take it up onto the highest peak. So right away, the crow's thinking, well, what's the sacred wood? Well, the creator goes, it's the tree that snows in the summertime. And then he had a pretty good idea what that is, and I think some of you guys already know what that is. And then he goes, well, how will I know? He goes, there'll be a star in the twigs. I put a star in the twigs, gather all of the twigs and branches and take them up to the highest point. But be forewarned. Whatever you do, do not touch the sacred fire. There will be dire consequences for you if you touch the sacred fire, for you and your people. So they go ahead and they start gathering up all of the sacred wood from the tree that snows in the summertime. There's the star in the wood. So they gather up all of this wood. Takes them about 2 months. They can't find any more on the ground. And they decide it's time to start the fire. They go ahead and start that fire. And every time an ember would go up into the air, a spirit would come down and grab an ember and take it into the sky and put a star into the sky. Come down, get an ember, made the moon. And all of these stars came out of this. So this happened for about 4 days. And on the 5th day, it looked like it was burnt out. No, it's not a good picture. Well, these are the stars in the sky that were created. Here's an ash field. This is what it looked like on the 5th day. Head crow's looking at that. He goes, it looks like it's burnt out. So he goes, I heard what he said. I'm not going to touch it. 6th day comes, he goes back and looks at the ash field. And he's curious. He's looking at it. No, not going to do it. 7th day comes, curiosity gets the best of him. He puts his foot into the ash field, and it starts the fire up right then and there. He burns his foot. He's hopping around on one foot, turns around, and he catches his tail on fire. He turns around again, and he breathes in a hot whiff of hot gases. Just then, a crash of lightning and thunder happened, and the Creator shows up right next to him. And he's mad. The Creator, I told you not to touch the sacred fire. He goes, there would be dire consequences for you and your people. You were forewarned of this. You see how you are today? You're burnt black. This is how you and your people will be from now forever. And now the crow can only say, caw, caw. And this is why the crows are black and how the stars are in the sky. So we'll take any questions now. So.
Okay, you were saying that the state of Illinois does not recognize any tribes. What would be the advantage for them to start doing that?
There is no advantage to the state. Well, we would like to develop a compact like we did in Wisconsin. We want to develop, we're doing this in Michigan or Minnesota already. We need to do it in Iowa because our traditional tribal territory ranged from Green Bay, Wisconsin, up into Minnesota, down through Iowa, down to St. Louis, back up through Chicago and back up to Green Bay. That was our traditional territory. There was families all over Illinois because the rivers were the highways and they had set up little camps. Little families would have their camps. Like with me being a Starved Rock, I'm a Starved Rock territorial chief. So there's many that are like me all over Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois. In my speaking, I went to Southern Illinois this summer and I met a person that said they believed they were part of the tribe. Their last name was Decorah. Decorah is a Ho-Chunk name from way back. I looked on my family tree and I have Decorah in me also. So I sent that to them and they said they thought they were about a 64th. So they're washed out. You have to have 25%. So to maintain your blood quantum. So we're trying something new within my tribe to make our lineage last longer. At our last tribal meeting, we passed a resolution, and I think that the lawyers have it now. But we passed a resolution that if you were enrolled before 1990, they're going to consider everybody that was enrolled before 1990 to be full blood. So, and that's to defeat the BIA blood quantum. So we'll have paper to prove that.
What is the BIA?
Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Okay.
Yeah, their total goal was from back in World War I to actually eliminate the Native Americans. They actually want us all off of the Native rolls. So the Native Americans, I have to carry my tribal ID to carry my eagle feathers. So what they say, Native Americans, dogs, and cattle have to be registered through the federal government. So it's still true today. So
What is the purpose of that? I mean,
well, for our cultural ways, we have to have our
no, I mean,
Tribal.
why would they want it done? That you have to register everything like that.
what do you mean? Who?
Well, why would you have to register your dogs and your cattle?
They for AKC, the purebred,
Oh, okay.
so the lineage. So they talk about lineage that way.
In the Ho-Chunk language, what does Winnebago mean?
That's an Algonquin word. I should have talked about that when I did my naming. I was named before we changed the name of the tribe. We were known as the Wisconsin Winnebago Business Committee. So we were known as Winnebagos all the way up until 1964. In 1964, we changed the name to Ho-Chunk, which is our traditional name. The name Winnebago means, and what I think happened was when the Nicolette came over, there was probably a, what do you call that? Like a red tide came in. And in Algonquin, Winnebago means people of the stinky water. So, yes.
Oh.
It was a matriarchal society, but you didn't really say much about women and how their role was involved in the times and the question is that you described this as a matriarchal society, but you'd never really explained anything about the role of women, how that evolved over
Like I say, that's
the period of
another
time.
rabbit hole I can get down into, but the matriarchal society, my grandmother was a clan mother. So she had say. The women had say whether they were going to send their young men to war to fight a different tribe. The women had a lot of say in different things. They educated our young people. They took care of our gardens. Any farmers in here at all? We'll talk about the women took care of our fields. We practiced Three Sisters planting because everybody kind of had a clan that they were born into. And when you're born into that clan, you have certain jobs that you would be doing. The Bear clan, I would be a protector and hunter. So that was part of my clan lineage. So know that the women, even at the powwows, it's again, another cliche phrase, women are sacred. They are very sacred in our Native community. So we still let them make a lot of decisions. And if you're married, you know that how much in trouble you can get if you don't listen to what your wife says.
Are young people learning and maintaining the language?
We're starting like I say, fortunately with the casinos now, we do have a little extra money and we're putting money into our cultural programs. And now with the advent of the internet, we have language programs that are available on the internet. And several of the Wisconsin schools were teaching Ho-Chunk as a second language. So it's one of the things that we're practicing. We fund some of the schools, so they help us out that way. So and it's usually for different ones. The unfortunate part here in Chicago, I work with some of the youth, and a lot of our youth has lost their culture. I'll have a group of about 30 or 40, and maybe 2 or 3 have practiced any cultural ways. So I have to remind them of who they are, and have them urge their parents to take them to a powwow to learn something about their lineage and who they really are. So, any other questions? Yes.
You kind of touched on this, but so as far as the blood quantum, if an individual marries someone outside of the tribe, you know, and then there's generation after generation, how do they become?
They get watered down.
Right. No, I understand that. I just,
Well, here's an example. My cousin, full blood, he married a Choctaw girl, and they had several children. Well, they have to choose which tribe they want to be affiliated with. So they chose the Ho-Chunk tribe. Now they're only half, but even though they're full blood. So yeah, and it'll get watered down as we marry outside. So that's by design. In 200 years, there may not be any registered Native Americans left. So, like I say, we are living history here today. So I always try to remind everybody of that.
We got a couple questions from our audience at home, if you don't mind. How do the Shibona fit into the tribal splits when they were splitting?
Chabonneau was with the Potawatomi, and he had negotiated quite a bit of the peace settlements with the settlers and the Native Americans, because he was telling them it was senseless to fight against the white people that are encroaching on the lands here, and that they're going to have to be resourceful on what they do and try to assimilate. Unfortunately, in the early 1900s, another government program was to assimilate or assassinate. That was the Native American philosophy, and that was by I think the Roosevelt, one of the early Roosevelt things. Yeah, he had a change of heart as time went on, but that was he had said a lot of bad words that were recorded. So yeah, right in the middle there.
Yeah, I just wondered your golden eagle feathers in the bonnet. What are the red feathers?
These are well, back in the day they would have been like a cardinal or something like that, but they're fluff feathers, so they're just dyed. So, but there's horsehair on the end. So yeah. So, and they all have a lot of history there, you know. So, like I say, with the bonnet is a great honor, but with the bonnet also is immense responsibility. So
Oh, here, I can come around there.
we're gonna get you your exercise tonight.
Yes.
Yes, right here. Thank you. Has the Native American Church incorporated or replaced many of the individual Native beliefs?
Well, with the Native American Church originally, let me get back to the slide here. And I want to talk about, when you talk about that there, originally, this would have been the original Native American Church when we didn't have any, it was the actual religion back then. Today, this is the newer one. And this is still traditional, but the other sect of it, because they kept getting raided in the 70s by the federal government. So what they did to counter that was they put a Bible here. So once they put the Bible there, they stop getting raided. And then they start, it's taken on a very biblical native interpretation. So with that, they still use the peyote in that. When I was younger, I went to several Native American church services, and I seen some of the people abuse some of that, and it turned me off. I'm not that way. I don't do that. I do the sweat lodge. So yeah, it had to do with government. So it's kind of a warped. I don't think it's a true way, but the people that follow that still think that's the best way. So, and you're never going to talk them out of that. So.
There was a question online of if the Ho-Chunk people were ever forced into boarding schools.
Yes, they were forced into boarding schools. My grandmother was taken from her family. She talked about this only once. She didn't like to talk a lot about bad things that had happened. When she was young, she talked about growing up by the river up there in Wisconsin. Her father would go out and hunt, trap, fish, do anything he could to bring in food for the family. Well, one fall, he decided to go work in the cranberry marsh, and word got out that there was a family living deep in the woods, and the government came and took all the kids, and they were sent to religious boarding schools. So, yeah, it was fairly common. So, it's an unfortunate part of history, but she never liked to talk about any of the bad stuff that happened. Whenever you would talk something with my grandmother and she didn't want to talk to you about that, she'd just zip it, and you could ask questions forever, and she'd just sit there stone-faced. So that's how she was. You know, I asked her once, she only talked about it once, about the death of her boy. She had a young boy. Back here. The young boy here, Daybreak, he was just a little older than that. I think he was 8 years old when he had an appendicitis attack. And they wouldn't take him into the hospital because he had dark skin, because they knew my grandfather couldn't pay. So they said, no, you can't take him. So my grandmother talked about how bad that was. And well, finally, one of the churches stepped up, said they would pay the bill. So they rushed Daybreak to the hospital. It was too late. He died of sepsis. So he's buried right next to both of those. So I always try to say a prayer over him too. And then there's my mother that my grandmother's holding. So we go back, or no, it's probably, yeah, I think that's my mother. And then Hannah was just a little younger. So.
Do you have a number of how many Native Americans live in Illinois now today?
Illinois has the third largest population of Native Americans in the United States, mostly because of Chicago. So back in the 30s, there was a program that the federal government rolled out to get natives off of the reservation. They dangled a carrot of $400, and they would relocate you to that city and pay 1 month of rent. So they went ahead, they did this, and they didn't have the $400. They moved them into an apartment and left them there. Well, up to 90% of the people moved back to the reservations. They figured out this was a flop. They didn't have the money to do it. It was unfunded. It was a bad plan to begin with. So They hatched a new plan 5 years later. This time they upped the money to $800. And they didn't have that either, but they couldn't put them within 500 miles of their reservation. So that's how a lot of our native people got moved to the Southwest, California, to Washington. They moved them people so far away that they couldn't get back. So it was they considered a success because they had right around 50% of the people stayed where they were shipped to. So I couldn't tell you that because it's but like say you come to one of our powwows and they're pretty well a lot of different tribes are there. So we have a lot of the Wisconsinites come down and live here in Illinois, and I know I have lunch with the elders, and we've got some Southwest people that living here also. So there's a whole group of different people that are different tribes, and it's kind of nice to talk with them, find out where they're from and that. So any other questions?
So this may sound as a stupid question since I'm from Balkans. I have not learned a lot about your history in school, but I don't understand that term Native American church. Does that mean just as a term for religious house, or it actually has to be a Christian church?
It's a religious, more of a spiritual movement. So we would practice in teepees, in little lodges. I know I'm up here somewhere. Here's where they would have the Native American church services inside there. So it's not heavy enough for sweat lodge. So the Native American church, the old way, they would sing songs and then they would use the hallucinogen to try to get a vision. So that's how this here is. This is inside of a teepee, and he would be the guy saying the prayers, leading the service. If you look here, this is a water drum. So a lot of people, they see that little thing and they don't really know what it is. It's for when we do Native American church. So I've got still have my regular Native American church stuff with me, but I practice a different way where I do sweat lodge and pipe ceremonies. So that's how I do my programs. I do a quarterly program, and it seems to be growing bigger all the time. The last time there was about 50 people there. Every time that we have a solstice, I try to have a program. A lot of my people that come to that have lost their way with organized religion, have not, they don't see they see the handout more than they see the benefits. So that's how they've kind of lost their way in that religion. If you look at some of the reservations out west, you'll see a lot of abandoned churches out there. The churches all went there to convert the people over to Christianity. But when it come time to put the bucket out to drop money in, there was no money to be had. So the church's financial decision was to move off the reservation and just abandon the church. So you'll still see that yet today. There's abandoned church buildings. So it tells you a lot about that religion. So let's wrap it up if there's no more questions. And I'm available for pictures if you want to take some pictures. So
Let's give Gerald a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here tonight.